Bomb, the graphic novel, written by Steve Sheinkin and illustrated by Nick Bertozzi. A First Chapter Friday read aloud video with the Word Nerd. Hi, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you from the graphic novel version of Bomb by Steve Sheinkin and illustrated by Nick Bertozzi. And just like I usually do with a graphic novel, I'm going to jump off screen in a minute and show you the pages so you can both see and hear the story. But before I do that, I had to pop on here quick because I have some thoughts about this book. Weird, I know. But I wanted to share them with you and give you a little introduction before we jumped into the story. So this book is a unique combination of two things. One, the format is graphic novel, and the genre is nonfiction. So that is becoming more popular, but a bit of an unheard of, a little bit of a rare combination up until this point. This is the second version of this book. The original version was a nonfiction, narrative nonfiction, text styled stories. You can see all the awards on the front. It has won so many awards, and I loved this graphic novel version. It is accessible. It is easy to read. It is easy to get into and understand. But as I was reading the story, I was like, I think I need to know more about that. I want to know more about that. I'm curious to know more about that. And so I think that this is a really great place to start. But once your curiosity is piqued, or maybe teachers, if you're using this book in class, I think it would be really good to pull out portions of the nonfiction text and pair it with it. It would give you a more complete and full understanding of this incredible time period in history. Last summer, the movie Oppenheimer came out, and it's about the man who created the atomic bomb, and he is a main character in this story. So it has connections to pop culture as well as history. And I think this is going to be an incredible book for you to add into your classroom library if you don't already have it. People who love history, people who love thrilling things like spies and war and political drama, all of that are in here. There's a lot of science, some really intense science. There's a lot of players, there's a lot of countries involved. But it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time, and even though I knew what had happened in history because this is real life, it was cool to see all the moving pieces behind the scenes. So highly recommend Bomb by Steve Sheinkin, illustrated by Nick Bertozzi, who, by the way, when I posted this book on Instagram, was like, that one was a bear to draw. So I can't wait to show you the illustrations that go with it. So let's just dive on into it. Bomb, the race to build and steal the world's most dangerous weapon. This is a riveting graphic novel adaptation of the award-winning nonfiction book Bomb, the fascinating and frightening true story of the creation behind the most destructive force that birthed the arms race and the Cold War. In December of 1938, a chemist in a German laboratory made a shocking discovery. When placed next to radioactive material, the uranium atom split in two. That simple discovery launched a scientific race that spanned 3 continents. In Great Britain and the United States, Soviet spies worked their way into the scientific community. In Norway, a commando force slipped behind enemy lines to attack German heavy water manufacturing. And deep in the desert, one brilliant group of scientists led by the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer, was hidden away at a remote site at Los Alamos. This is the story of the plotting, the risk-taking, the deceit, and genius that created the world's most formidable weapon. This is the story of the atomic bomb. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, May 22nd, 1950. Ring, ring. The federal agents were on their way. Harry Gold had a few minutes to destroy 17 years of evidence. We can see Harry going to his bedroom table, to his closet, grabbing all the papers he can, kicking open the toilet lid, shoving them in there, and then trying to plunge them down. Hit the flush, and then there's the ding of the doorbell. FBI, open up. Come on, Harry. We know you're home, a voice on the other side of the door says. Mr. Harry Gold, in the flesh, the FBI agents say. Ready to continue our little chat? Harry says, what more is there to say? I'm a simple chemist. I live here with my father. So you keep saying, "Let's talk in your room, Harry." As they're walking up the steps, Harry says, "I'm a homebody, sad but true. Never even been west of the Mississippi." And then they open the door to his bedroom and they see that clearly the place has been turned out and destroyed. Harry takes a seat on his bed while the FBI agents begin looking through his things. "Rochester seems pretty far for a homebody, huh? Must have picked it up at a used bookstore somewhere. Train schedule. Why would you have this, Harry? Probably from when I went up to New York to see a cousin." The FBI agents keep looking, keep poking around his room. Finally, one of the agents stumbles upon something. He opens a book and a map drops out. Harry says, "Oh, God. Never been west of the Mississippi, huh? Explain this." And they open a map that says Santa Fe, New Mexico. "I like westerns. I ordered it by mail," Harry tries to explain. "You're a spy, Gold. You betrayed your country. Think we'd be here if we didn't know?" "You're tired, Harry," the agent says. "Quit fighting." "Fine," Harry says, "but there's a great deal more to the story. It goes way back. I would like to tell you it all." That first little section was actually just the prologue. These spy scenes, these interrogations of the spies, are going to happen throughout the entire story and will give us background information as we read. Now we're actually going to start chapter 1, which is called Skitty Superhero. On this page, it also has a scientific drawing of the liquid drop theory, showing us how a neutron can be split into two separate atoms by a uranium nucleus until we have two atoms and it releases a bunch of energy. And that is the basis for this whole story. Harry Gold was right. This is a big story. It's the story of the scientists who raced to build the deadliest weapon ever invented and the spies who stole the secrets. But like most big stories, this one starts small. In New York City in the 1920s, in junior high to be specific. "Hey, fellas, ask me a question in Latin and I'll answer you in ancient Greek," with a boy named Robert Oppenheimer. So then, the teacher is saying, you divide both sides of the equation by 1/2 and... "What is it now, Robert?" Robert takes the chalk from the teacher. "This can be done much faster in the following manner." Young Oppenheimer was on his way. Several years later, at the University of California, Berkeley in 1933, Professor Robert Oppenheimer's popular and puzzling introduction to quantum physics. You can see him teaching in front of the class, writing on the board. He turns around and says, "Got it? Good? Let's move on." But his students don't look like they really get it at all. And they're not good. The tone of this scene changes to purples and blues, trying to show that it is dark, it is night, but we can still see the characters. The young professor's social life was as full as his classroom. "Comfortable?" he says to the girl, though he often got lost in thought, even on dates. "Mm-hmm," the girl says. Oppenheimer says, "I'll be right back. I'm going for a walk." And you can see the girl looking at him all confused, like, what is happening? Oppenheimer leaves the car and begins to walk. And as he walks, he thinks, and he thinks, and he walks, and he thinks. The girl waits, and she waits, and eventually she falls asleep from waiting so long. And then she wakes up and she checks her watch and she realizes it's been a very long time and she gets nervous. So she leaves the car and she flags down a policeman on the side of the road. She says, "My date went for a walk hours ago. What could have happened to him?" So the two of them begin searching. They look in the woods around the car, they drive back to the city, and finally back to the college. They're at the Berkeley Faculty Club where the professors stay. It's 3 a.m. They knock on the door, and finally the door opened. Oppenheimer says, "I was thinking about physics." Robert Oppenheimer had completely forgotten he'd been on a date. "I'm so sorry," he says to the girl. She does not look like she's going to forgive him. Police reporter got hold of the story and wrote about it in the newspaper. It says, "Forgetful Prof Park's girl takes self home." No one who knew Oppenheimer was the least bit surprised. Dramatic shift in color again shows us that the scene and the mood and everything in the story is changing. Well into the 1930s, he lived in blissful ignorance of politics and world events. They're talking about Oppenheimer still. Until the violent rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany made politics and world events impossible to ignore. Hitler seized full control of Germany, arresting and murdering political opponents. The Nazis stripped German Jews of their legal rights, kicking them out of universities and government jobs. Hitler spoke openly of his vision of a Nazi ruled Europe with no Jews. Hitler built a massive military and began grabbing territory. With threats alone, he took Austria, then Czechoslovakia. Then he set his sights on Poland and beyond, far beyond. Further successes can no longer be obtained without the shedding of blood, he's telling his commanders. In waging a war that is not right, in waging a war, it is not right that matters, but victory. Close your hearts to pity, act brutally. The stronger man is right, Hitler keeps saying. All of this seemed a long way from sunny California and the world of theoretical physics, but it wasn't. Not anymore. We can see here someone is getting his hair cuts and he's reading the newspaper, and all of a sudden he reads something that makes him just jump up out of his chair before the haircut's even done. And he runs out the door, and the barber's left to shout, "Professor Alvarez?" And he runs away from the barber and he runs across campus and all the way up the steps trying to find Oppenheimer. He says, "Oppie, you gotta see this." And he literally runs right into Oppenheimer. "Han split a uranium atom. Meitner says it's right. Bohr too." "That's impossible." "Read. Look here." And he points to the newspaper. So then Oppenheimer begins to read out loud. And what scientists are describing is a world changing experiment. Otto Hahn, in his lab in Berlin, Germany, has split an atom. This was not thought to be possible. Scientists have long understood that atoms are composed of even tinier particles. Atoms have a central core or nucleus made up of particles called protons and neutrons, held together by an enormously strong force. Surrounding the nucleus are particles called electrons. It is also well known that some atoms are radioactive. That is, their nucleus is naturally unstable, shooting out particles at high speeds. This is useful to experimenters like Otto Hahn. They can use radioactive elements as tiny cannons. In his Berlin lab, Hahn bombarded uranium with neutrons. He was staggered to discover that the force of the collision seemed to be splitting the uranium atoms in two. He dashed off a letter to his former lab partner, Lisa Meitner, a brilliant Jewish physicist who had fled Nazi Germany. At an inn in Sweden, Meitner and her nephew, the physicist Otto Frisch, discussed Hahn's strange findings. "Bohr says the nucleus of an atom might act like a wobbly droplet, right? Give me my ski pole." This is the nucleus of a uranium atom. Say it's hit with a speeding neutron. Could the force of the collision cause the nucleus to stretch and stretch just like a liquid drop until it splits? If you really do form two such fragments, they would be pushed apart with great energy, fantastic energy, enough to cause a grain of sand to jump, perhaps a centimeter, and that's a single atom. And that is where this whole story truly begins. If you want to continue reading Bomb by Steve Sheinkin and illustrated by Nick Bertozzi, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the video description box. Then be sure to like this video and subscribe, and check out all of the other First Chapter Friday videos I have waiting for you on my channel. Teachers, sign up to get lessons, teaching tips, and more delivered directly to your inbox twice a month. When you do, there'll be tons of freebies for you as soon as you subscribe, including a free First Chapter Friday startup kit. I'll see you again next time. Happy reading.